Arguably the first black queen in the European court. Check who I say is the first one is down below in the description box. The world is finally learning, and well, at least hearing about Queen Charlotte of Mecklenburg Strelitz. She's the long suffering wife of King George III. Now, you may have seen her on Bridgerton. They also have a show called Queen Charlotte on Netflix. So today I'm so excited to present this to you. I am Lady TrenettWilson, social historian and lecturer. And today's lecture is very interesting because we as black people have to understand that not only were we elite and great business owners in our own country, but we were royalty in courts across this world. And Queen Charlotte is one of the people who are just coming to the forefront who had been hidden for a long time. Now, she was born on May the 19th, 1744. Now, her lineage of African descent can be traced all the way back to Margarita de Castro de Sousa, who was a noblewoman from the black branch of the Portuguese royal family. Now, rumors also was during that era that the man who was publicly her legal father, Duke Charles Louis Frederick of Mecklenburg, was not really her father. No, no, no. Instead, allegedly, it was Abraham Petrovich Ganable. Well, he was a high ranking military official and engineer that had risen from slavery into the Russian noble court. So there were some rumors that he may have been her father, but of course she came from a very high class and high ranking, society as far as family's concerned. So I don't want to put no dirt on a name. I just want to share with you what there was rumors back then. Now, her contemporaries referred to the Queen Charlotte as mulatto because she was described as by her personal physician, and his name was Christian Frederick Stockman, and he described her as having a small and crooked body, but she had a true mulatto face. So during her coronation, she was also said to be a descendant of the Vandals, a Roman African tribal race. So most people want three or four pieces of proof that substantiates a claim. Giving you three or four right here. And so I think that even just looking at her features, you can tell this woman is mixed with something. And whenever I put these type of videos out and we talk about this issue, I get people down in the comments sometime who don't like the fact that there could be black royalty everywhere or people who were African descent in the royal courts. But we were there. They held high roles, and I'm very excited that we're able to finally learn about some of these people. Her mother's name was Princess Elizabeth Albertine, but by the time she reached 17 and married King George III, both of her parents were gone, and who actually signed her marriage certificate or marriage contract was her older brother, who, by the way, to me, they favor a little bit. This is a picture of him, but he favors the Habsburg. The people who were actually royals who had children with their relatives, and they began to get this really long swooped face. Anyway, that's what her brother looks like to me. But that is who signed the contract with King George III to get married. Now, he was 22 years old and he was just beginning to be the king, and she was 17 years old. And we've talked about that throughout some of our other studies. We've found out that back then they married girls off really young. 17 to us today is just simply too young. But at least he wasn't an old man. He was only 22 years old. So they were married, and back then they hadn't met each other. So they had to learn to love one another and know each other within their marriage. Now, he needed a queen, so that's the reason they, of course, found her. And she didn't want to be in the limelight. She didn't want to be a politician. And so that was another reason that really appealed to him. And so after they were married, one problem that she found out very quickly was the mother-in-law was going to be all in their business. And she would like to use little tricks and things to trip poor Queen Charlotte up because she knew that she didn't know this etiquette. So she was brought to England on August the 14th, 1761. And they had 3 days. It was a big celebration. And they married on August the 17th at St. James Palace. On September the 22nd, Queen Charlotte was introduced to the world. Charlotte did not speak English, however, but she was a fast learner. So she learned English. She's from Germany, so she spoke German. So she had to learn how to speak English pretty quickly, and she did. Now, almost 1 year after the date that they got married, they had the first of 15 children, all of which lived until adulthood except two. There's a saying that the woman is supposed to give the king an heir and a spare. I think she fulfilled that over and over again. Now, her firstborn was named George, Prince of Wales, and he would become the Prince Regent. So later on in the story in our lecture, you're going to understand why he had to take over for his father. So the entire family was supposed to live at a place called St. James Palace. It was known as the official residence of the family, but they actually lived at a place called Buckingham House. And this is where the queen and the family felt a lot more at ease. The formality of all of the etiquette that existed in the palace didn't exist in her home. And so she really loved being there. Her husband loved being there, the children. And so that's where they spent most of the time. So all those strict rules out of the door, she was able to really do what she loved to do, which is garden and love to bring in people to have play music. And she was also very philanthropic. So she gave to a hospital that became the Queen's Hospital later on in her life. She loved classical music, and she also had Joseph Malone here. Here's his picture, and he was known as the Black Mozart. So I've left a end card there for you in the description so that you can click on and listen to him. I mean, a Black Mozart. I'm just so excited about all of the royal and elite blacks that I get to bring you. I just want you to like, share, and subscribe. Will you share this with your friends and leave me a comment? Tell me about some stories that you want to hear and tell me what you think about Queen Charlotte so far. So she is doing everything that she is supposed to do. She is living a wonderful life. She is decorating. Look at this house, y'all. This beautiful home. Her staff, they in fact said that her children, the staff that took care of her children, talked of her very favorably, said she was a kind and sweet woman. So here she is bringing in black musicians, being nice to the people, and really appreciating the position that God had allowed her to be in. And then things began to change. Boy, don't our stories always begin to change because suddenly her husband began to have some mental problems. Now, mind you, during the time that he ruled, it was quite a time. Revolution. They went through the American Revolution. They just went through a whole lot. And more, he began to lose his power. In 1765, her husband, he had his first bout of mental illness. Now, the mother who was running everything, she wanted to keep it quiet because she knew that if she didn't, if she said something, Queen Charlotte could take over. Now, I was saying at the beginning that Queen Charlotte didn't really like politics or really wasn't into politics, but she did know that she had the right to the power. Now, her son had grown up by now, and this is he'll be now King George the Fourth, and he wanted to be Prince Regent and he aligned more with his grandmother. So here it was Queen Charlotte on one side and the king, King George the Fourth, he was the Prince Regent at the time, on the other side. And here we have King George the Third losing his mind. Now today he would be known to have been psychotic, a schizophrenic, multiple personalities. Everything was just coming down on him, and he had been a king since he was 22 years old. The man had 15 kids. So there was a lot going on ruling the country. Now, each time it would get worse and worse and worse. And so he was clearly mentally unstable and they couldn't hide it anymore. When she and the kids did visit him, it would get really weird because he would hug them so tight he wouldn't let them go. The queen began not to trust her son. She didn't trust the mother. And the thing was, the mother thinking that the queen would get the king declared sane and then get him declared insane and she would take over. Whereas the queen thought the prince regent and the Augusta, his mother, wanted to get him declared insane and make him the prince regent. In the end, a bill was passed, and it was called the Regency Bill of 1789. And the Prince of Wales was declared the regent, which meant as his father began to decline more and more, he would step into the king. Queen Charlotte did, however, keep control over her husband and his decisions. She just didn't live with him because he was a little on the dangerous side. I wanted to say, look at these kids. Now, if you want to see if there is some African heritage that shows up in generations long after the African heritage was there, look at these children. These children all have 4C hair. The son, the daughters. So we see some of that African heritage rising up again. And even Queen Victoria said that she had African heritage in her background. The once happy go lucky queen, she became bitter. She became angry. They said she was in a bad mood. Now we know she was probably depressed. She had seen her strapping husband, who had given her 15 children, go from a man who was a king and who had made decisions and who was strong to a man who had to be dressed, who couldn't, change his clothes. He was talking to himself. He was in a room. He was completely insane. So she loved her husband. She had been with him since she was 17 years old. So I'm sure she did get mean. I'm sure she was not very happy. She didn't host her concerts anymore, and it said that she and her children, they had a little rift because she was so moody and so angry. I think that's why when you see some of the depiction on some of these shows on Netflix, and as you see, I didn't do reviews on them because she seemed so horrible the way they depicted her, but especially on Bridgerton. But she was depressed, I think, and she lost a man that who was strong and strapping, and now she was no longer that. So that's just kind of what I thought there. It is said she stopped visiting her husband around June of 1812 because he had become violent and she was scared to be in the same room with him. She wouldn't even sleep in the same bed with him. People also turned on her, which she let them know she did not appreciate. Queen Charlotte had long lost her first love. He was completely gone by then, and when she passed on November the 17th, 1818, it was said that he didn't even know she passed. Her son was also said to have held her hand until the end of her life. So, what an amazing story about a Black woman of African heritage in England as the Queen. I know I'm going to get a lot of comments down below about argument about her heritage, but I'm just so glad that this is now being found out, that her story is being told. If you've ever been to Charlotte, North Carolina, that city was named after Queen Charlotte. In fact, out in front of Charlotte Douglas Airport, her statue, here it is here, that's where you will see it. Rutgers, the college Rutgers, when it was first founded, it was chartered in 1766 as the Queen's College. So there's been a lot of love given to Queen Charlotte over the years, and she deserves it. Having 15 kids, goodness gracious. Queen Charlotte's Hospital, it used to be called Queen Charlotte, is now called Chelsea Hospital, but it was originally named after her. So there's a lot of love for Queen Charlotte, and I just wanted to bring her story to light, tell you about her life, her children, and her heritage. I hope that you enjoyed today's lesson. As always, my lectures are always for educational and entertainment purposes only. My sources this time are kind of bit a lot. I had to look a lot of different places to learn about the fullness of her story. But a few places that I did was able to pull from was the true story of Queen Charlotte and King George III by historian Elsa Taylor, the Encyclopedia Britannica, Cambridge University, and Wikipedia. Oh, and also blackpast.com. So I thank you for all those sources. I loved her story. I hope you did too. Now, make sure you click down below on all of our other great videos. I've shared a few other ones. The one on her supposed dad, Hannibal, who was a great military king. I've also shared a few other people who were in the European court that you may find interesting. Now, I thank you for joining me, and as always, I'll see you on another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. Thanks for watching.